Monty. What my feeling of seeing this film is that I think I start to understand why the human species has been so successful over so many countless generations with our air-bonding instinct. And you can understand how eons ago a couple could survive all the things that the world could throw at it. I think that's what we see in a very elemental way. Really. I also think that Dr. Oz has a lot to learn from a film like this. You know, it's like, this will be like ocean rowing therapy for couples. Tell us, Steve, how you came to be involved in this project.
How we decided to make this film is really interesting. I was in my office, in our production company, Engel Entertainment. We do a lot of nonfiction television, Animal Planet, Tuesday nights, Northwoods Law and Lone Star Law about game wardens in New England and in Texas. And we make documentary films on a periodic basis, when we can afford to. And I was sitting in my office, and it was a hot June day, and I am an inherently lazy human being, and I'm reading the New York Times, and it's literally the newspaper, and I come across an article that's about 4 or 5 inches long about a couple who had rowed in a rowboat from Morocco to Manhattan. And my visceral reaction was that they were insane, that they had done this all by themselves, and no one had ever done this before, at least in recorded history. And I thought they were nuts. I turn the page, and I get a phone call 5 minutes later from a literary agent. I take the call, the literary agent introduces herself. I do not know her, and she says, I'm working on a book project over the next few months, and my boss and I were thinking there might be a visual element to the story that we're trying to write a book about. And my boss, who you know, said to call Steve Engel. He's the only person I know that could think of something to do with this. So I was very gratified, and I said, what are you talking about? And she said, I don't know if you saw, but this couple just rowed from Morocco. So I thought it was, for people who are older, candid camera. I thought I was being pumped. So I'm looking around my office, since we are a television and film production company, for like a little camera to see if I am being joked a bit. And it turns out it wasn't, and I said what I thought, which was, boy, these people I think are insane. And she said, would you like to meet them? So I said, sure, and they were in my office 45 minutes, an hour later. And what struck me, and then Heidi, who I immediately, Heidi and I are married, and she and I make the films together. She's our attorney for all of our TV shows and all of our films. And she also does her other work on employment and discrimination, but we have always been a team from the day we met. And so I called Heidi, and I said, I've met these remarkable people, and what was remarkable about them was their authenticity. That they argued, every question I asked them when I first met them, they started bickering with each other. And I thought, oh my God, if this is how they are at the end with me, what's from the cameras on the boat? So I'm very instinctual, and I don't necessarily think a lot. And so I just blurted out, oh, this sounds like love in a rowboat, and I want to make a film about it. Can I have your footage? And they were like, well, gee, we haven't thought about that, but over time, we arranged for them to send us all of their footage. And I cannot stress enough what that entailed. It was 800 hours of footage, of which 725 hours were of those shots of them just rowing. And their thumbs must have been as big as their heads, because they wrecked the settings every time on every camera. So our co-producer, Kara Smith, who has worked in the company for several years, she spent almost 6 months putting everything back together from a timeline. and from which camera the footage is coming from, so that we could create the story over time. And they had 8 GoPros, and so they sent us, so we agreed to make a film, or at least try to make a film, without ever seeing the footage.
Yeah, Heidi, tell me, first of all, it's remarkable that they went to all the trouble, 8 GoPros and 800 hours of footage, and not think of what they were going to do with it at the end.
Well, they got
They did have an idea. Heidi, tell me about that first screening, when you're actually watching, going through that and seeing this story unfold and how it kind of revealed itself to you.
Well, I think that each of us looks at life through our individual lens, and I myself was very delighted by the transformation that occurs, because as you see in the very beginning, she says, when they ask about roles, she says, well, I think I'll do the cooking and cleaning, just like I do at home. And it always reminded me of one of these mystery novels where on page 17, you learn that the wife actually has a PhD in mathematics, even though she's a stay-at-home mom, so you kind of think she's going to be the killer at the end. In other words, she's a very capable person. This is a woman who was actually an employment lawyer for 15 years and hooked up. It's a bit of an upstairs, downstairs story. He's a he-man. He was involved in the forces in the military in South Africa. She comes from a diplomatic family, and they have this on-again, off-again relationship for some 12 years. So here they're coming together, and you know that she's quite confident, but she's starting the journey thinking I'm going to be basically passive. So over the course of it, from a personal satisfaction standpoint, I would say for her to be recognized as the captain at the end is like, all right.
Does anybody have a comment or a question you'd like to share, sir?
2 questions, very factual. So 800 hours of raw footage. Do you have any sense of how many hours you put in to make 2 hours of filmmaking to do what you just said, how many hours the person did just to create it as a physical timeline and then everything else? Do you have any sense?
The question is how many hours it would take to put together the film.
I hesitate to think, because those hours translate into cost. But we love telling stories. And the core team were the editor, Gary Madsen, who also edits a lot of our television shows, because he lived in the edit room for 9 months. There was Kara Smith, co-producer, and then Dana Schwartz, who was the director. And Dana, and it's interesting because when you use the word director for a film like this, because she wasn't directing other than the 30 seconds of the interview that you saw. Everything else, except for the very end when they go off on their honeymoon 2 years later, it was all in the edit room. But what Heidi's described in answering your question about watching the first rough cut, that was the vision. And what Dana and Gary and Kara did on the day-to-day was execute an incredible vision of survival and of the sea voyage, but it's also their transformation as human beings, what they learned about themselves and what they learned about each other, and about their relationship.
But was your question, though, it took around, 2 years?
It took us 2 years.
2 years of putting that together.
Yeah.
And you can imagine, I think, how shall I say, creating a narrative, this narrative is what was very unique, because you really could have approached the material from different storylines. The environment, the adventure itself, the peril they went through, the relationship itself, and the transition of roles.
His original goal was glorification of him as an adventurer. He had done several adventures, he's written several books, and his original idea was to chronicle this journey to show him off as this amazing adventurer. That was what he started out doing, but by the end, he completely had abandoned You have a second question?
The second question was, we start the film literally with the boat and putting it in the water and they're off. I'm wondering about the preparation. I'm wondering about them physically. Did they do any training to get physically ready? Some of the things, you know,
Was there any coverage of
lines,
that?
and whether there was a conscious decision about not doing any of the story before this film starts.
Yeah, the question is, was there any thought of doing any bit of the preparations for the story, whether getting in shape, you know, getting supplies, outfitting the boat, and so
What
on?
it takes to
You would think that she would have prepared.
Okay, so there are two parts to your answer. One is there was no footage. There was a little bit of footage that we had in an early cut of them talking a lot more about the stuff at the beginning, but we felt that it slowed everything up, and I didn't really see the value in putting in too much backstory about them. I dragged everything, because we had a million cuts of this thing. But the real answer to your question is that they didn't. I asked them how much they trained for this, and they said 2 hours. And so it makes your head explode. Yes. And also, one of the things that we worried about a lot while we were putting the film together was the stuff that you're not seeing, because there are a lot more fights. And there's a lot more examples where they ended up not having brought the proper redundancy. And so for people, some of you who may be very experienced as either sailors or ocean goers, it was a fine line of him being revealed as kind of a nincompoop. And so the problem for us as filmmakers is, if they both are wholly unlikable, you will not care if they survive. And it's hard for us because we start out without anything. So, in the back.
Yes, ma'am?
Was there ever any discussion while going over all of the film of the lack of any flotation device ever on any of them? Or them never being tethered in a situation where an overboard could have been disastrous, especially if they weren't both equally trained on all the equipment on that boat?
Well, that's what I was alluding to before about the fact that we knew, once we started looking at all the footage, that their preparation and their concern for safety was not what you consider to be professional. And so, but the story we wanted to tell was essentially their story, and we got the footage that we got. So we weren't going to flag it every time, but I twitch. When I see him crawling, I just twitch, and I worry about you all watching it, getting so focused on the incompetency or the potential for disaster to not be able to still enjoy what the real story for us was. But that's what goes through.
Well, that's what, of course, this goes through my mind too, because we program this, we always have a sailing, film feature, and we all of us are always looking for everything in the background, what model rating they're using, and so forth. You just can't help it. You can't help it, right? And that's what I found so fascinating about this, is because that setting sort of gets pushed into the background a little bit. And then you do think, well, can't just go over the side with a tether or something, that you're really thinking about that. But it's kind of like going over the Niagara Falls in a barrel wings.
But just to give you some context, Riaan's previous journeys with someone, he had taken a friend who is disabled with cerebral palsy, circumnavigating Madagascar and kayaks, as well as Iceland. Right. So what he wasn't prepared for was the peer-to-peer relationship of having someone with him who actually was quite capable. But that, when he started this journey, that was his own prior experience. So that was part of his own transformation.
We have a few more questions or comments?
Yeah, I have a question about the business model. How does the business model work?
Can you tell us?
Business model, schmizzness model. What business model? We just wanted to tell a story. You mean our business model for the film?
Yeah, where'd you get the money to do it?
Cannibalized it from my TV shows. And basically, I took it out of profits of the company. And the thing is, you see, we're fortunate in the regard that we own all of our own equipment. We have a lot of edit rooms. We own all the cameras. So our costs for making this one, we didn't have to shoot anything except the interview and then the end when they roll off. And that was, by the way, they went to Hawaii from San Francisco on their honeymoon rollout. That's where they were going. But we didn't, because of the nature of this film, we just chose to tell the story without really having any kind of distribution lined up. So right now, it's going to film festivals, and then we're deciding what's next, whether to try to get it on to a digital platform, or we might choose to put it ourselves up on like iTunes. And Dana, this is her first directing experience, and she has a master's degree in social work, but she is a filmmaker, more as an executive producer and producer, but she always wanted to direct something, and I felt that she was perfect for this because of her communication skills, her sense of empathy, and the fact that she didn't have to go out and direct it in the field. It was really working as part of our team and sifting through the footage on these competing narrative lines and to see what the idea that Heidi and I had when we first met them and we thought about it, whether it could be proved up. Because the truth of the matter is if we received the footage and what we had in our heads wasn't really the story, we would have ended up telling a different story. And maybe it would have been called Riaan's Folly. You know, who knows? But fortunately, the instinct that we had was supported by the material once you sifted through the 725 hours of just work.
We have some other comments and questions before.
Yeah. Well, Heidi has to go to a panel.
But thanks again for coming, appreciate it.
How much time do we have?
Where they are now, what they have planned next to do? Anything?
They live in South Africa, and they do a lot of TV and adventures, and they take people on adventures. That's kind of what their business is, and also writing books and things like that. But I don't know what they've got planned.
I have a question. When the couple first saw your cut and your take on the story, was there any doubt that they would release it? It's a great story, but I don't know if I want to show all my weak points.
They don't have any say in it. They have no participation in making the film.
They never saw a cut before?
No.
They just handed it over to
They handed it over to me, and the way the contract was written, I didn't want to involve myself or my company in a project that I was paying for, or Dana and I were paying for, and not have complete control over it. But if they wanted to pay me for it, then they could tell me what to do.
Yeah, I didn't mean so much to actually, well, I guess my point is that they were willing right from the get-go to have warts in all their experience.
Yes, and that was a concern, and we talked about it on the phone. Because he would continuously say, don't forget to vote. Don't forget to fill out the
Sure.
Their reaction.
So what did they say when they saw it?
They've never seen it.
They've never seen it.
Are they ever going to see it?
They've never seen it.
They don't want to see it?
No, I've invited them, but they've never seen it.
Wow.
They'll probably see it when it's out either in theaters or on iTunes. But to me, it's a great story for them as a couple.
Thank you so much for helping, for bringing it to us. We really appreciate it. Thank you for joining